Have you ever made a decision, like a real decision, where you told yourself, this is it, I'm all in, no turning back, and then nothing happens? Or maybe you start and then just fizzles down. I did that. 3 weeks ago, I made a strong resolution, a strong commitment. I was ready, I was set. I was going to launch a YouTube channel. I had my ideas, the setup, even the energy. And yet, here I am 3 weeks later. I have shot 1 or 2 videos, and each of the videos I was like, is this what I want to do? Now, I could have made excuses. I could have said life got busy, I needed more time, maybe this wasn't the right time. But here's what I realized. None of those things were true. The truth is that some part of my identity expression, or how I showed up and how I executed my things, wasn't serving me. Now, don't get me wrong. My core identity, who I am and whose I am, what I stand for, is intact. That's solid. And I remember that there was a time I could question that, but right now I don't. That's solid, and that's not the problem. But then I discovered something powerful. Even when your identity is set, there are layers of conditioning, layers of habits and mindset shifts that can either propel you forward or keep you stuck. And that's where I had to be really real with myself. See, I recently listened to a coaching conversation with Tony Robbins, and it hit me really hard. He said something that made me rethink everything. Success is 80% psychology and 20% mechanics. Now, you don't need more tools, you don't need more resources, you don't need more money to do the things you need to do. You just need to shift your state, shift how you show up. And that's when I realized that there are 3 key factors missing from my approach. These factors kind of determine how I show up and how I interact with people. Now, these 3 shifts, when applied, could take me from thinking about it to doing it consistently. Factor number 1, my strategy was off. Now, this is a very strong part, a small part. It's really the smallest. You see, I had a plan, sure, but it was packed with too many things. I overloaded it. I made it so big that it became overwhelming. And the moment something feels overwhelming, you hesitate, you delay, and before you know it, you're stuck. And that strategy thing isn't really the main thing, but it's very important. But let's look at factor number 2. This was my story. This is really important, guys. My story was holding me back. You see, I kept saying I don't have enough time, but the truth is, I just had a story, I told myself this. There are stories we tell ourselves. Stories for me, like I've tried so many times and I didn't want to fail. Stories like I've tried all these, I didn't want to disappoint you guys. And these things tend to weigh us down. And I waste my time when I engage in these stories. But here's the interesting thing. When we change our story, things start to change. Number 3 that I learned from Tony Robbins was that my state needed a reset. Now, what do I mean by a state? State is how I show up. You see, I don't really think that I overloaded my schedule. Sometimes I got too engaged. Sometimes I got too into something and I forgot to stop. I forgot to put a stop. And I did one thing way too much and then something else delayed. Now, you see, the most interesting thing is the state that we show up with. How I show up determines a lot of how I do the things that I do or I don't do. I noticed that the state of mind, the state of my body, the state of my energy is very important. Now, for a long time, I lived on a place of when I'm tired, I just need to break. When I'm tired, I need to take coffee. When I'm tired, I need to, it gets overwhelming to a point where my energy and how I show up changes. But what I learned from Tony Robbins is just with a few movements, with a few changes in how we show up, and with a few tweaks in the story we tell ourselves, and with a few changes in our strategy, things get to change. Now, I could learn all these things and not take action. But one of the most interesting things that I want to tell you is starting over is important. sooner rather than later. And it's okay to start over. This is my start over video. I'm starting over, this time changing the story that I tell myself, but not just the story, changing my state. Knowing that, listen, I got this, and I'm gonna give up, and I'm gonna give in, create the energy that I have inside of me to accomplish the things that really matter to me. And what really matters to me is that I get to share these things that I'm dealing with, these things that I'm conquering with you, because I believe that when we share, when we work together, when we learn and share the tips and tools with each other, then as I grow, you grow. And when we grow together, we can create remarkable results in our lives. So guys, if you like this kind of content and you're fired up to start over again, like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next video. Again, 1 video per week is my commitment, and I'm back to it again.